I am a wicked woman who has done all sorts of evil, and my husband hates me to the bone. After I died, he sat before my coffin all night with reddened eyes, murmuring constantly, "Be a good person in your next life. Don't be so vicious anymore." I found it laughable. If there were a next time, how could a vicious woman possibly become a virtuous one after rebirth? My methods were even more extreme than in my past life. But now, why is that virtuous and honorable husband of mine from my past life regretting it? The capital's #1 talented lady, Li Chu-Kuang, and I are well-known bosom buddies in the capital. But recently, I've always been avoiding her. My maid, Xiao Hong, is a little confused. Miss Li has been visiting often recently. Why does the young miss always claim to be sick and not see her? I was flipping through the account book, picked up the tea beside me, and took a shallow sip. She is bad luck. What is so great about seeing her? The young lady and Miss Li, aren't they bosom friends? Looking at the accounts in the ledger of my dad secretly using the Song Manor's money to subsidize the Li Manor over the years, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. More than that, she and I are blood sisters. Li Chu-Kuang's mother, Wang Qinglian, is my mom's cousin. And before she was married, she often came to the Song residence to visit my mother. One thing led to another, and she started a sordid affair with my dad. Before my dad passed the provincial exam, the Song family had already been in decline for several years. After all, they couldn't bear to part with the dowry my mom brought over, so this matter was concealed by grandmother. Wang Qinglian was arranged to marry a subordinate of my dad's. When she got married, she already had Li Chu-Kuang in her belly. If they wanted to hide this matter, they could have hidden it from mother for her whole life, one way or another. But of all things, while Wang Qinglian was accompanying her mother during childbirth, she softly asked in her ear, "Do my features and Li Qiuing's look very much alike?" The mother never would have imagined that her own husband and sister would actually do such a filthy thing right under her nose. That year, I was 8 years old. Standing outside the layers of gauze curtains, I saw Wang Qinglian bend over and say something in mother's ear. Mother propped her body up, looked at me, and vomited a mouthful of fresh blood. That day she had a difficult birth and hemorrhaged. One corpse for 2 lives. Later, Wang Qinglian told me that was her telling mother to hold on for my sake. Back then, I actually even believed her words. It wasn't until many years later that I learned of Li Qiuing's background. I interrogated the old nanny who delivered my mother back then, and only then did I learn the truth. It is a pity that, by that time, Wang Qinglian had long since died of illness. But luckily, I was reborn. In my past life, I lived in the rear courtyard for 20 years. What kind of schemes and plots haven't I seen? For me, revenge is not a difficult matter. I feigned illness to avoid Li Chu-Kuang a few times. On this day, she brought Wang Qinglian along to visit me, using her status as my cousin. Aunt Wang Qinglian often came to visit me. She was skilled at embroidery with golden needles and colorful threads. My needlework was taught by her. I lost my mother when I was young, and I actually treated her as a source of comfort. The number of times she came to the residence increased, and so did her opportunities to meet my dad in secret. I had thought that my dad didn't take another principal wife because he still missed my mother. I never thought. It turns out he has always had someone else in his heart. When Lord Li first became an official, his monthly salary was only a dozen or so taels of silver. But Wang Qinglian and Li Chu-Kuang have been living a life of fine clothes and choice food all these years, living very pampered and refined lives. They have been relying on my dad's subsidies from all these years. My gaze lingered for a moment on the intricately patterned golden hairpin on Wang Qinglian's head. Then I covered my mouth with a handkerchief, let out a light cough, and told Xiao Hong to serve tea. Li Chu-Kuang picked up the teacup and took a sip, then put it down, saying with a frown, "This is old tea from a previous year." Upon hearing that, I smiled and said, "Your mouth is certainly precious. I for one can't tell the difference. This tea was sent by grandmother. Grandmother said the household's expenses have been large lately, so each courtyard must be frugal with their spending. And I am inevitably a bit short on funds here." Wang Qinglian also put down her teacup and tried to smooth things over. Your mother is from the wealthiest family in Jiangyan. How could you be living so frugally? After she spoke, she noticed my unfinished embroidery left on the table and casually picked it up. You didn't do these few stitches well. Let Auntie help you fix them, I responded, and turned to chat with Li Qiu-ing about the expensive teas recently shipped into the capital. The sun slanted down. The tea steam curled up. The courtyard was a picture of peaceful years. I looked at the mother and daughter in front of me and suddenly smiled. Actually, I have some fine tea leaves in my room too, but I put some poison in the tea you drank today. I was afraid of wasting the good tea, so I served this instead. As the words fell, you could hear a pin drop in the room. Li Chuquang's expression froze in an instant. What did you say? Drip, drop, drip, drop. A few drops of bright red blood dripped onto the pure white silk on the bamboo embroidery frame, slowly seeping and spreading. Li Chuquang slowly turned her head to look at Wang Qinglian beside her. Blood was continuously flowing from Wang Qinglian's mouth and nose. I looked at Li Chuang and said faintly, "She drank more of that poisoned tea than you, so it is taking effect faster." Li Chuang clutched her chest, slumped to the ground, and stared at me with wide eyes. You are crazy. Why do you want to harm us, a mother and daughter?" I smiled and looked at Wang Qinglian. "You might as well ask your mother why she wanted to harm my mother." The maid beside them saw her mistresses spitting blood and collapsing, and hurriedly ran to get my father. Me father had just stepped through the door when he saw me pressing a dagger against Wang Qinglian's neck, asking her in a cold voice, "Speak, why did you harm my mother?" Wang Qinglian couldn't speak, only continuously spitting up blood from her mouth. Me father was so scared by the blood all over the floor that his legs went weak. I slowly turned my head and looked at him. "Daddy, are you scared the night Mommy died from a difficult birth? The blood she shed was much, much more than this." He pointed at me with a trembling fingertip. "Sung Jinyu, are you insane? Put the knife down. Now." I lowered my hand and sighed. She can't speak anymore, so I can't ask her anything, but I still have my ways. I stood up straight, walked over to my dad, and gripped the hand he had stretched out tightly. The next instant, the blade of the knife cut a long gash across his palm. At this moment, I was like a malevolent ghost that had crawled out of hell, and the servants following behind my dad were also scared away by the look in my eyes. Normally, I wouldn't be a match for the strength of a grown man, but he was too scared, and I easily dragged him in front of Li Qiuang. The blood from his palm flowed down his wrist and dripped into the pool of blood that Li Qiuang had coughed up. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. Blood mingling proves kinship. So she is Daddy's daughter too, huh? I let go of my dad's hand, walked over to Wang Qinglian, and crouched in front of her to ask, "When my mom was giving birth, this is what you told her, wasn't it? It hurts a lot, doesn't it? If you admit it, I'll give you a quick death." My dad scrambled up from the ground, cursing incoherently behind me. You unfilial daughter, you even dare to stab your own father. How dare you?" Before he could finish his sentence, he was splattered in the face with blood. The dagger in my hand stabbed into the side of Wang Qinglian's neck. The gushing fresh blood flowed down the veins of my palm. She stared fixedly at me, her mouth agape, unable to utter a single word. In my last life, what I regretted most was not being able to kill my mother's murderer with my own hands. This life, at last, has not been lived in vain. Li Chuquang's father, Li Sheng, has now latched onto Prince Heng, getting promoted and ennobled all along the way. His current status in the officialdom is already on par with my dad's. My dad naturally wouldn't dare to offend him. I wiped the bloodstains off the dagger and softly reminded my dad. "In another 4 hours it'll be dark, and Lord Lai will be sending people to look for his wife and daughter. Dad, rest assured. No outsiders saw them enter the Song residence. However, some people did see a luxuriously dressed mother and daughter go up the mountain to burn incense and pray for blessings." My dad propped up his trembling body to get up from the floor. When he looked at me, his eyes were filled with fear. He wished he could kill me. Yet he could only curse me while helping me clean up the mess. The Lee mother and daughter encountered robbers on their way up the mountain to pray for blessings. To protect Lee Qing, Madam Lee was stabbed multiple times and died from her wounds. Lee Chuing barely escaped with her life. As Lee Chu Kuang was carried out of my courtyard, her eyes were bloodshot and she stared viciously at me. Song Jinyu, I want you to pay for my mother's life with yours. I found it a bit funny. From now on, if you dare appear in my sight, I'll expose your origins. Do you think you can still live to the day you avenge your mother? My dad didn't come back until late into the night, his robes still stained with dust and blood. When he rushed into the courtyard to settle scores with me, I had just finished copying the accounts. He looked at the white silk beside my hand, and with red eyes asked me, "You've done such a vicious thing. How do you still have the face to be alive?" Wang Qinglian killed my mother. She deserved to die. Why should I pay with my life for a murderer? I put down the brush and looked up at him. Daddy, you've been crying. It seems that Wang Qinglian really is your sweetheart. No wonder you've spent so much money all these years supporting her and her daughter. He sneered. This courtyard of yours is already completely surrounded. Even if you don't use this white silk, you won't live to see the dawn. I handed the copied out account books to him. This is the fake account book. Father has kept all these years to subsidize Wang Qinglian and her daughter. You want to kill me to cover up your disgraceful deeds, but is there any wall in this world that doesn't leak wind? If I die, this account book and your handwritten letter about your affair with Wang Qinglian, giving birth to that bastard child and angering my mother to death, will be delivered into the hands of the imperial censor of the censorate. When that time comes, your official career, the future and reputation of the Song clan, and this life of yours, do you think you can still save them? He looked at those accounts, his eyes a dead gray. You had everything planned for today. I smiled. Although I killed Wang Qinglian, it was Daddy who helped me clean up the aftermath. Now we, father and daughter, are grasshoppers on the same rope. My dad looked at me with a strange and fearful gaze. You've been so kind-hearted since you were a child. How could you suddenly become so vicious? Why, I can't possibly tell him I've had a rebirth, can I? Before my dad left, he pointed at me and cursed. Vicious woman, you are just a vicious woman. Vicious woman, how long has it been since I've heard that word? In my past life, when Shen Rongjing was choking me, he also cursed me just like this. In my past life, Shen Rongjing fell in love with Li Chu, Wying at first sight. But the Shen family were prominent officials for generations, and Shen Rongjing was the legitimate eldest son upon whom high hopes were placed. So the Shen family's matriarch, Princess Yonging, naturally looked down on the Lai family's kind of background of getting ahead by sucking up and flattery. Instead, she took a fancy to me, who was dragged along by Li Chuguang to be a foil, and was dressed plainly, and had someone come to my home to propose marriage. After marrying into the Shen family, Shen Rongjing and I had a period of loving days. Shen Rongjing's official career was smooth, rising straight up the ranks, and with the support of the Shen family, he became the prime minister in his 10th year of service. Married for many years, for a family of the Shen's standing, yet not another person was ever added to the rear courtyard. For a time, I became the object of envy for all the ladies in the capital. When others asked, he would just smile faintly and say, "My wife forbids it." After speaking, he took off his cloak and gently draped it over me. Back in the courtyard, the tenderness in his eyes gradually faded. He grabbed my hair and slammed my head into the bathtub. The intense pain on my scalp forced me to raise my head and look at his furious face. Shen Rongjing asked me with a smile, "Sung Jinyu, are you comfortable in your seat as the matriarch of the Shen family?" I choked out a mouthful of water and asked him, "Why don't you divorce me?" He didn't speak, just stared at me for a long time, and then let out a sneer. "So amusing. How could I bear to let you go, unless you are dead?" That is right. Unless I am dead, no one will know Shen Rongjing's secret. After the Lai family's assets were confiscated, Shen Rongjing knelt in front of the ancestral hall for a whole night, just to bring Li Chuang into the family and protect her for a lifetime. It was only then that I understood that she was the one he truly loved. That night, after I drank the pregnancy stabilizing medicine, I began to bleed uncontrollably from my lower body. I was in a coma for 3 whole days, and Shen Rongjing never came to see me, only because at that time Li Qiuquang was being humiliated to the point of wishing for death by people sent by my mother-in-law. Outside the courtyard that Shen Rongjing had arranged for Li Qiuquang, a few old women exposed her identity as the daughter of a convicted official, saying she was supposed to be a government-owned prostitute, but shamelessly slept her way into becoming a mistress. And now she still has the audacity to want to marry into the family. While those old women were cursing, they didn't mention Shen Rongjing's name at all. Everyone made all sorts of guesses, making it seem like Li Qiuang had offended every noble in the entire capital and completely lost all face. Several of the noblewomen there to catch the adulterers had their servants hold down her hands and feet and slapped her hard across the face a few times. When Shen Rongjing came to visit me after comforting Li Qiuquang, I complained to him. My father and I went through so much trouble pulling strings to save Li Qiuquang from being exiled and forced into prostitution. I never expected she would do such a shameless thing. I shouldn't have saved her back then. Now she has caused the lady of that mansion so much suffering. Shen Rongjing was stunned for a moment. My lady, you and her are as close as sisters. Why would you say such a thing? My husband, I am afraid you've misunderstood. I've never been a kind-hearted person. If Li Qiuquang were to fall into my hands, I would definitely flay her with my own hands. I lowered my gaze to the bulging veins on the back of his hand, my smile not reaching my eyes. But it is a good thing my husband comes from a family of upright scholars. You would absolutely not do such a despicable thing. I have to say, my mother-in-law's move was extremely ruthless. With the Shen family standing, now that Li Qiuquang's reputation is completely ruined, she will never be able to marry into the Shen family in this lifetime. But Li Qiuquang was also quite reckless, to actually jump into the lake in the dead of winter. I sat in the tea house, drinking the hot tea kept warm on the stove, and quietly watched as Shen Rongjing jumped into the icy cold lake water to save her. He snuck out of the mansion to see Li Qiuquang, without even bringing a servant boy with him. Xiao Hong's hands were shaking as she poured the tea. Miss, the one in the lake is... Young master, someone's going to die, right? I put down my teacup, watching the 2 people bobbing in the lake, and said coldly, my child is gone because of them. They have to pay with their lives. Xiao Hong said softly. Nothing was found in that bowl of pregnancy. Calming medicine you drank, miss. So no matter what you say, the young master won't believe it. What a clever trick. I sneered. Li Qiuquang deserves to die. That philandering cat who messes around everywhere also deserves to die. Xiao Hong, do you think after today, I will become the wealthiest widow in this capital city? However, things don't always go as planned. Shen Rongjing was a good swimmer, and in the end, pushed Li Qiuquang onto the shore. The pedestrians on the shore then pulled him ashore. I gazed at the sky, and only when tears welled up and spilled from my eyes did I lift my skirt and run to Shen Rongjing's side, sobbing as I spoke. Husband, you must not die. While he was treading water, Shen Rongjing saw me sitting in the tea house, watching the show. He weakly opened his eyes, and his cold hand cupped the side of my face. You'd better hope I die, because if I live, you won't. But things didn't go as I wished. Shen Rongjing survived, and I didn't die either. Because of this incident of falling into the water to save someone, Shen Rongjing could no longer have children. I threatened him that if he dared to harm me or anyone around me in the slightest, I would make the scandal of him damaging his foundation to save Li Qiuquang known to everyone. The Shen family's reputation was more important than his life, so he had no choice but to back down. From that day on, in public, Shen Rongjing and I began to act like a loving couple. becoming the perfect mortal pair in the capital that everyone envied. But no one knew that everything Shen Rongjing did was to humiliate me. Me mother-in-law learned I could no longer bear children and wouldn't let Shen Rongjing take a concubine, so she hated me for cutting off the Shen family's bloodline and punished me every night by making me kneel before the ancestral hall to atone. She was afraid of harming the mother-son bond, so she pushed all the blame for forcing Li Chuqing to commit suicide onto me. After Li Chuqing jumped into the lake, she didn't get timely medical treatment and was left with an illness from the cold, passing away in less than 2 months. Shen Rongjing hated me even more and fiercely squeezed my neck. "You vicious woman, you are the one who killed her." I forced a bitter smile and said, "I just didn't let anyone save her. That is all. How did I kill her? With all the things she did, it is already kind of me that I didn't stab her a couple of times. Why don't you just strangle me to death today and avenge her?" Shen Rongjing's fingertips tightened and then loosened. It wasn't that he couldn't bear to kill me. He just didn't dare to gamble the Shen family's reputation on it. Just like that, he and I tormented each other for 20 absurd years. Reborn into this life, I will never live that kind of life again. I missed every opportunity to meet with Shen Rongjing. Now I was grounded in the courtyard by my dad and couldn't meet anyone at all. Xiao Hong, however, became anxious. "Miss, you've now reached the age for marriage. For master to ground you for so long will cause outsiders to speculate, which isn't good for your reputation." My action of lifting the brush paused for a moment. It is a pity this father of mine isn't as ruthless as I am. He doesn't dare to completely ruin my reputation. My dad, just like the Shen Rongjing from my past life, wants to kill me, but is unable to. Xiao Hong sighed and said, "I wonder how much longer Miss will be grounded." I rubbed my wrist and said lightly, "Soon." Grandmother didn't know why I was grounded, but to display her authority as the matriarch of the house, she punished me by making me copy Buddhist scriptures every day. In the past, when my mother was long unable to bear my father a legitimate son, she also punished mother this way. The Buddhist scriptures had to be copied from dusk till dawn, and I could only finish after copying until my eyes grew dizzy. Grandmother said this was the best way to wear down a person's temperament. Only when I went to deliver the Buddhist scriptures was I able to leave the courtyard. In grandmother's room, Aunt was half, kneeling before the bed, massaging grandmother's legs. Aunt had a weak personality, but uncle held a high and powerful position, so she was inevitably often summoned back to the residence by grandmother to be disciplined. Grandmother didn't let me get up, so I could only remain kneeling. Grandmother was in poor health and rarely went out, so while Aunt massaged her legs, she chatted about the affairs in the capital. I heard that Lord Li promoted concubine Fang to be his second wife. Grandmother said with her eyes closed, "With so many matters in the inner household, there needs to be a woman to manage things." I was also married in as a second wife 2 months after my husband's first wife passed away. Aunt took the medicine bowl from the servant, handed it to grandmother, and continued, "That deceased Madame Li was beautiful, and both the son and daughter she bore were exceptionally good. Looking that young master of the Lai family and his older sister looked like they were carved from the same mold." As she finished speaking, the medicine bowl in grandmother's hand was knocked over, shattering all over the floor. She rubbed her temples and waved her hand at us, saying, "All of you, leave. I want to be alone for a while." Aunt and I exchanged a glance and left. It wasn't until we reached a deserted spot that Aunt said to me, back then to pave the way for my older brother, "Mother made me, who had just come of age, marry an old man close to 50 as his second wife. In all these years, I've suffered endless humiliation, a life worse than death, and she never once asked about me or showed any concern. I am her biological child too, but just because I am a girl, she has never treated me like a human being. For so many years, she took in many concubines for my older brother, but not one of them could give the Song family a son. The hatred in Aunt's eyes could no longer be contained, and she let out a cold laugh. Who would have thought? The grandson she longed for so long now carries someone else's surname. This is truly karmic retribution. I lowered my eyes and said, Aunt, that shop in the west of the city. You should stop going there. Whatever, at least I got to vent some of my anger today. Auntie smiled sarcastically. Back when I got married, the Song family gave me a few boxes of worthless trinkets. If it weren't for the dowry your mother added for me, I am afraid my life would have been even worse than a pig or a dog's. Auntie put some drugs in grandmother's medicinal soup, making her weaker day by day. But in my past life, this matter was quickly exposed. How could she be a match for that old fox who had been scheming for most of her life? After grandmother ruined her face, she sent a few dancing girls to her husband's home. Auntie was abused to death in the backyard. Before leaving, Auntie suddenly asked me, "Why do you trust me so much?" I looked back at her. Common interests can't bring people together, but a common hatred can. Auntie hated grandmother for ruining her life. I also hated grandmother for coveting my mother's dowry, plotting to ruin my mother's marriage with her childhood sweetheart, making her marry into the Song family and ruining her life. Auntie's lips curved slightly. You are even smarter than I thought. They are no match for you. Before my mother passed away, the barefoot doctor that grandmother invited said that my mother was carrying another baby girl. Grandmother thought it was a waste of money and secretly replaced several precious medicinal herbs in my mother's medicine. It wasn't until my mother died in childbirth and she saw my younger brother's bruised corpse that she sighed to the old nanny beside her. If I hadn't changed those few herbs, would my grandson have lived? Over these years, grandmother arranged several concubines for my father, but all that did was add a few daughters born of concubines, one after another. She never would have imagined that the grandson she had longed for so long wouldn't bear the surname Song. A banquet, she finally saw that grandson she had longed for but couldn't have. He was smart and clever. Though only 3, he could already recognize words and recite poetry. Grandmother, who had always been stingy, actually gave him a longevity lock made of pure gold. She wanted to bring her grandson back to the Song manor to raise him. But as the matriarch of a noble family, she naturally didn't dare to do something so foolish. She could only hold on tightly to this secret, guarding it until she became sick with worry. It had only been 3 days since she returned from the Lye Manor, and she was already refusing all food and water. This time, no one discovered she had been poisoned. They just thought she had no appetite, and that is why her body grew weaker by the day. After grandmother fell ill, the invitations sent to the manor were all addressed to me. Although my father was wary of me, he couldn't keep me confined to the courtyard forever. On the way to the Prime Minister's manor, I had the carriage stop and chose a pair of white jade earrings. My father looked at me with a cold smile. What kind of luxurious things has the eldest princess not seen? You think she'd fancy this pair of earrings of yours? I held the box and said with a faint smile, I can't go empty. Handed after all. My father sneered. Suit yourself, just don't lose face for the Song manor when the time comes. Leaving these words, he flicked his sleeves and left. Me father and I have already become enemies. He is not as good at keeping up appearances as I am. Now he is not even willing to ride in the same carriage as me. I waited at the entrance of the Prime Minister's mansion for a long time, and only went in after I saw Imperial Consort Xiao get out of her carriage. I didn't go to the front courtyard. Instead, I pretended to have sprained my ankle and sat on a stone pier by a small path. I was rubbing my ankle, and when I saw the eldest princess, I hurriedly stood up to salute. The eldest princess raised her hand towards me and instructed the accompanying maidservant. Help her to a side room to rest. I stared at the Eastern pearl earrings on her earlobe and hesitated before speaking. Your Highness is naturally noble in temperament. Wearing such a luxurious item is a bit redundant. The maidservant behind her instantly changed her expression. How audacious! How dare you improperly discuss the princess? I lowered my eyes and spoke, not fearing death. I, your servant's maternal grandfather, was in the jewelry business. When I was young, I heard my grandfather say that if you place an Eastern pearl under the sun, you can see a rainbow. The eldest princess took off the eastern pearl from her right ear and glanced at it, noticed something was wrong, and turned to instruct her maidservant. Go back to the room and get another pair of earrings. Not far away, a few noble ladies were walking this way. If she went back to get the earrings, I am afraid there wouldn't be enough time. I hurriedly handed over the pair of white jade earrings I bought on the way here. I bought this while I was out shopping, but it is just an ordinary design. These past few months, the bursary hasn't given me my cosmetics money, and my purse is truly empty. The white jade on that earring really isn't of good quality. Its luster isn't translucent, and it even has quite a few flaws. When the Grand Princess saw it, however, she just smiled. I, on the other hand, think it is very good. When the eldest princess appeared at the banquet, noble consort Xiao was just chatting with everyone there about how to identify Eastern pearls. The simplest method is to place the Eastern pearl in the sunlight. If you can see a multicolored rainbow, like luster, it is real. And if its color looks gray, it is fake. The large Eastern pearls tributed this year were extremely few, only enough to make a pair of ear pendants. At this moment, they were being worn on the earlobes of noble consort Xiao, the unrivaled favorite of the 6 palaces. Consort Xiao looked smugly at the eldest princess, but saw she was wearing a pair of plain and simple white jade earrings, and sneered angrily. For a princess to wear such a low-grade item, and not be afraid of losing the royal family's face. Nowadays, Lingnan is suffering from constant floods. This princess, in order to ease my imperial father's worries, hasn't put my mind to these matters. The eldest princess lowered her gaze and said with a smile, "But as for you, imperial consort, wearing Eastern pearls worth 1,000 gold to the Prime Minister's Manor's banquet, you truly do have this princess in mind." Everyone knows that recently, the eldest princess and the Prime Minister have donated a lot of silver to set up kanji sheds in the disaster area. Once this was said, the overly opulently dressed noble consort, Xiao, could no longer keep her composure. The maid who came to the side room to fetch me mentioned how noble consort Xiao's face turned livid with rage at the time, and her own eyes crinkled with laughter. Noble consort Xiao had secretly swapped the birthday gift His Majesty gave to the eldest princess a few days ago. In my past life, that pair of fake East Sea pearl earrings caused the eldest princess to lose all face. In this life, I successfully won the eldest princess's favor. After medicine was applied to my ankle, I was taken to the banquet by a maidservant. Me dad is old, his eyes aren't working well, and from time to time he'd look toward the eldest princess sitting on the main seat. He probably thought his old eyes were failing him, to actually think that the eldest princess was wearing the earrings I gifted. Until they saw me sit down in the seat beside the eldest princess, and even chat and laugh with the princess from time to time. He was just completely dumbfounded. When leaving the Prime Minister's mansion, my dad scoffed. "You are clever, all right, managing to win the Grand Princess's favor." As his words fell, the managing mama from the Grand Princess's side walked over, holding a box. "Lord Song is right. Our Grand Princess was also praising your daughter's cleverness today." The mama opened the box. Inside were a pair of golden keys and a gilded jewelry case. My dad looked at the things in the box and was so angry he almost passed out. A pair of low-quality white jade earrings was all it took for the eldest princess to see my predicament. Her meaning couldn't be any clearer. The golden key and the gilded makeup case are things given to the mistress of the house. Now that grandmother is critically ill, I, the legitimate daughter, am the only one left in the rear courtyard qualified to manage the household. My dad made some superficial efforts to let me manage the house, but only let me handle the purchasing and bookkeeping of things like firewood, rice, oil, and salt. Me days weren't exactly good, but they weren't too bad either. Spring passes and autumn comes. The days go by very quickly. During this time, my dad found me a poor scholar who hadn't yet entered officialdom, wanting to marry me off hastily. I casually mentioned that the eldest princess would personally inspect him for me before the marriage, and he never brought it up again. The fall of the Lai family happened later than in my previous life. In my previous life, Li Sheng's house was ransacked for embezzling disaster relief grain. But in this life, he was dismissed from his official post by His Majesty for accidentally killing a songstress in a brothel. I remember in my previous life, the one who killed the songstress was another confidant of Prince Heng. I'd long heard that Prince Heng was lecherous and absurd. So I guess Li Sheng was just taking the fall for him. I couldn't figure out why such a change had occurred in this life. Not until I went to the cloth shop to select fabric for winter clothes did I hear the women next to me chatting that the Shen family's young master, who was doted on like the apple of their eye, had been forced to kneel in the ancestral hall for 3 days. I wonder what kind of bewitching potion this young master of the Grand Tutor's family has been fed. I hear he hasn't eaten or drunk for 3 days. Who does his mother, the Yongning County mistress, think she is? How could she watch her son ruin his own future and let the daughter of that convicted official enter the family? But she does dote on her own son, after all. I heard the county mistress has already agreed to let that vixen marry in as a concubine. Hearing the familiar name, the movements in my hands paused for a moment. To ruin his own future just to marry the daughter of a convicted official. Looks like Shenrong Jing has been reborn too. In his last life, Li Chuang's death was his biggest regret. So in this life, he must marry Li Chuang at all costs. I wonder if this time, with Li Chuang in the hands of County Mistress Yongning, Shenrong Jing will still be able to protect her. Sitting in the tea house, eating pastries, I laughed out loud just thinking about it. Suddenly, Li Chuang appeared before me, wearing a veil. Her pair of limpid eyes glared at me. Song Jinyu, why do you still have to fight with me at a time like this? Are you really trying to drive me to my death? I was confused. What did I fight with you over? She bit her lip and said, You ruined my reputation. Wasn't it just so you could snatch young Master Shen from me? I swear to God I might snatch other things, but I would absolutely hand Shen Rongjing over to someone else. Ruin your reputation. I suddenly understood what she meant and asked her in return. Are you talking about that time in the Ladies' Academy, when you copied my painting, patched together poems from several other girls, and gained the reputation of being the #1 talented lady in the capital? In my past life, out of consideration for our bond, and knowing how important face is to an unmarried young lady, I never exposed this matter. But in this life, I have no need to save face for her. A few days ago, at the Imperial Censor's wife's poetry gathering, I took out a painting I did back in the boudoir school. Several poems were inscribed on the yellowed scroll soon. Someone discovered that this painting, and even the phrasing in the poems, were very similar to what Li Chuang had produced at another poetry gathering. At that time, she simply said it was something she made when she was young, leaving others unable to argue. She probably never expected that I had in my possession the painting scroll that was truly made when she was young. The so-called #1, talented lady of the capital is nothing but a joke. Through the veil, I could still see Li Chuang's face turn red, then pale. I looked at her and said softly, I've told you before, if you appear before me again, I will expose your secret. Her eyes bloodshot. She stared at me. Then I'll also publicize the matter of you killing someone anyway. With the Lai family in trouble, I won't survive either, so I might as well drag you down with me to die. She is really improved. Learning how to threaten people. I chuckled. And raising my voice, I said, Miss Li, why did you have to plagiarize someone else's poem? You are a talented lady. You really shouldn't do that. Many people in the tea house looked over. Following the sound, Li Chuang almost fled in a panic. She hastily fled downstairs and even ran into a donkey cart. Watching this scene, I couldn't help but let out a laugh. Sitting in the horse-drawn carriage on the way back to the manor, I still hadn't stopped laughing. Xiao Hong couldn't help but say, My lady, didn't you say you wanted to be a cruel and ruthless woman? A cruel and ruthless woman wouldn't laugh like this, would she? They wouldn't unless I couldn't help it. But after returning to the manor, I couldn't laugh anymore, because the Shen family had sent people over. I still couldn't escape it in this life. They were in a hurry to find a girl of suitable age to marry Shen Rongjing, and they still found out about me. However, my dad politely refused, using the excuse that I had to attend to my sick grandmother and temporarily manage the household. He warned me with a grim face. With a temperament as arrogant as yours, marrying into the Grand Tutor's manor will only cause a lot of trouble and implicate the family. Who couldn't see through his little scheme? Doesn't he just want Li Qing to marry Shen Rongjing? I couldn't be bothered to get involved in this, so I turned and walked toward my courtyard. But I still underestimated my dad's methods. In the evening, when a maid from the kitchen brought over some calming soup, the look in her eyes was a bit off. Only after she saw me finish drinking and put down the bowl did she retract her probing gaze. Not long after, a man reeking of sweat lifted my quilt, only to find nothing but a few pillows inside. The moment the man turned his head, I knocked him out with a vase. When Xiao Hong heard the commotion, holding a candlestick, she pushed open the door to my room, saw a man with a bloody head lying on the floor, and screamed out loud. Soon, a group of people carrying torches arrived in my courtyard. The moment I saw my dad, I cried out as if I were terrified. "Father, thankfully your daughter knocked the scoundrel out. Otherwise my innocence would have been lost." My dad's expression looked awful. As long as you are okay, that is good. Thank you for your concern, Father. Your daughter is fine. I'll be able to fall asleep after another bowl of calming soup." My dad's expression instantly froze. I lowered my voice and said, in a voice only the two of us could hear, "Father put me in charge of the kitchen's purchasing and bookkeeping. A lot of people in the kitchen depend on me to skim a little for themselves. Just how stupid are you to let someone tamper with my food?" The sound of a young servant's announcement rang out in the courtyard. "Old master, old madam went to sleep tonight after drinking the calming soup. But old madam suddenly foamed at the mouth in her sleep, and now the people in the courtyard have already gone to fetch a doctor." When my dad heard that, his face changed drastically, and he hurriedly ran to grandmother's courtyard. The lights were bright all night, and finally they managed to save grandmother's life. My dad caught his breath and had just walked into the front yard when he saw two bloody corpses laid out in the yard. He was stunned for a moment, retreated to the corner in horror, and started to throw up while holding onto the wall. The servants quickly covered the corpse with a white cloth. I bowed to my dad. "My daughter found a medicine bottle in Shure's room last night. This girl has actually developed thoughts of harming her master. After being tortured last night, she actually said she was instigated by Daddy, which is just utter nonsense. Daddy has always been filial. How could he harm grandmother? So your daughter beat her and this scoundrel to death and told the public that she was caught having an affair with the scoundrel. Daddy was what your daughter did, all right." My dad's face turned green then white, and it took him a long while to squeeze out a sentence. Good. You've got guts." A servant reported that the eldest princess's carriage was already waiting at the gate. Of course I have some ability. Otherwise the eldest princess wouldn't be so eager to see me right after accompanying the Prime Minister back to the capital from the south. Staring at my dad's deathly pale face, I smiled and said, "The eldest princess also said she wants to personally pick a husband for me. Let alone the Grand Tutor's family, it wouldn't even be difficult for me to marry into the royal family now." These were all things I said to bluff my dad. The eldest princess was so anxious to see me only because she had heard me tell a story I made up when she was bored before. I wove everything I experienced in my past and present lives into it, and she listened with rapt attention. As soon as she returned from accompanying the Prime Minister down south, she sent someone to fetch me. Perhaps it is an ill-fated connection from 2 lifetimes. If I don't marry Shen Rongjing in this life, my dad will definitely pick a terrible marriage for me and ruin my entire life. That is just how it is for women, constrained by rights and laws. They can never decide for themselves. Rather than being picked over and chosen by others, I'd rather take charge for once. Coincidentally, the eldest princess also suddenly asked about my marriage. "I heard that County Mistress Yonging has taken a liking to you, and intends for you to marry into her family as her daughter-in-law. I am not going to jump into that fire pit. The Shen family has a good family background, and Shen Rongjing is quite a fine figure of a man. If you are worried about that, Miss Li, Yongying has her ways. She won't be able to get in the door. Your Highness, do you still remember the plot in my storybook where Mrs. Meng's female cousin had an illicit affair with the husband, then married another man and gave birth to a daughter? If you've met that Miss Li, you should have been able to notice that she and I look very similar around the eyes. For a moment, the eldest princess was so shocked she couldn't speak. Are these actually real? Of course it is true. For something so outrageous, I wouldn't dare to just make it up. Then your dad has also been scheming to harm you all this time. I covered my eyes and said in a low voice, my father will do anything to pave the way for his illegitimate daughter. Last night, he even drugged my soup and found an outside man to come into my room to ruin my innocence. If the maid who did it hadn't panicked and served the wrong soup, I wouldn't be here today. What you are saying is all true. You've actually suffered such injustice. No one would believe this kind of thing, even if I said it. So your Highness can just listen to it as if it is a story. The mama standing behind them chimed in. What Miss Song said should be true. When this servant went to pick up Miss Song today, I heard the guards of the Song Manor chatting about a major incident that happened at the Song Manor last night. The old madam of the Song family fell ill, and the manor also beat a maid and the scoundrel she was having an affair with to death. I couldn't stop trembling all over. The look the eldest princess gave me suddenly turned to pity. Is there anything you want this princess to help you with? I shook my head. This subject only wishes to marry soon, even if it is just marrying into an ordinary family. The eldest princess interrupted me. An ordinary family can't protect you either. As long as you want, you can marry any of my imperial younger brothers. I concealed the delight in my eyes and spoke with trepidation. Then the third prince. The eldest princess's expression faltered for a moment. You mean my third brother? Everyone knows the third Prince Shiwu's birth mother was a dancing girl. Though he was born into the royal family, he had no background at all. But fortunately, he fought on the battlefield year-round, able to earn merits and fame for himself. What I am interested in, of course, isn't that part of him. It is that I know not long from now, he will die in battle. I can't let go of my past in the mortal world to become a nun, and to escape the Song family. I have to get married in the end. In that case, I might as well become a widow sooner. Igzi Wen's married me, and after he dies, I can still help him keep the household running and manage family affairs, so he is not really losing out. I said with a straight face, after we met last time, this humble servant is deeply infatuated with the third prince. The eldest princess thought for a moment and asked, are you talking about that time during the spring hunt when we passed by the military camp and saw him beheading a deserter? Thinking back carefully, it seems like I've only met Shiwu's Fae that one time in my life. I could only nod. The eldest princess had a rather subtle expression as she looked at me. That time, many noble ladies were scared out of their wits. I actually thought my third younger brother would never be able to marry in this lifetime. That was indeed the case in my past life, with the eldest princess making the arrangements. My marriage to Shiwu's was considered settled. My dad laughed at me for courting death. What kind of person is that Shiwu's Fae? His Majesty threw him to the borderlands just to let him fend for himself and die. You can't really think you've found a backer, can you? He has been bloodthirsty since he was a child. He even dared to kill the nanny who raised him since he was little. Let's just see how long it'll be before those little schemes of yours get you killed by him. I don't know if your daughter will die at his hands, but your daughter knows. I will definitely die after you, Daddy. I took a dowry registry from the table and handed it to my dad. I've copied my mom's dowry registry from when she married into the Song family. You can just prepare a copy for me as my dowry according to this. My dad flipped through the thick registry, his hands still trembling. Where would the Song family even get the money to prepare all this for you? Are you trying to drive me to my death? If we count the dowry you prepared for Li Qiang and the properties and farmlands you've bought over the years, maybe you can scrape together 80%. I curled my lip into a smile. Daddy, my future husband has a violent temperament. If he finds out you prepared such a large dowry for your illegitimate daughter, I wonder if he'll kill someone. In the end, my dad couldn't bear to part with the illegitimate daughter his beloved bore for him, and finally relented. 50%. 50%, nearly emptying out the entire Song Manor. I nodded in satisfaction. Reborn into a new life, many things were different now. But Li Qiang was still the same as in my past life, with a few old women surrounding her courtyard, scolding her for not knowing her place, the daughter of a disgraced official still dreaming of climbing into bed to be an outside mistress. But this time, many guards were added outside Li Qiang's courtyard. This matter was quickly suppressed. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of the ministry's autumn banquet. Counting the days, Shiwu should be back in the capital by now. Once he returns to the capital, marries me, and then goes back to the battlefield. I'll be able to be a widow, with Shen Rongjing protecting her. Li Qiang didn't lose all face like in the past life, but I didn't expect her to actually show up at this kind of banquet. On a small path she appeared before me, softly shedding tears, and said, "Song Jinyu, you plotted to poison my mother, and now you won't even leave me a way to live? What way to live? You ruined my reputation, and you didn't even leave me a single cent of the dowry my uncle prepared for me. Are you trying to force me to my death? If I wanted to force her to her death, I wouldn't use these kinds of painless and trivial methods." I looked at the familiar figure behind the tree and finally understood why she was putting on this act. I raised my hand and directly gave her a hard slap. Li Qiang looked at me in disbelief, clutching her face. I looked at her with a smile. "Weren't you trying to act pitiful in front of a man? Let me help you." She didn't dare to provoke me, glaring at me fiercely. "Song Jinyu, you not only murdered my mother, but also poisoned grandmother, and made your own father sick with anger. You've done every evil deed, and you will get your retribution." "That is not right. Shen Rongjing has already left. Who was she saying these words to?" Just then, a man in purple walked up from behind me. His features were handsome and refined, yet his whole body could not conceal an aura of slaughter. He met my gaze, raising an eyebrow slightly. "Aren't you head over heels for me, Miss Song? How come you are acting like you don't know me?" So he was Shi Wu's. I came back to my senses and performed a curtsy. Li Qiang, with half her face swollen, roared heartbreakingly, "If there is half a lie in what I just said, may I die a horrible death. Is the third prince really going to marry such a vicious woman? Turns out I took her dowry, so she is going to ruin my marriage." I secretly broke out in a sweat. If this marriage gets messed up, where else can I go find a short-lived husband? Hearing this, Shi Wu's gave me a deep look. I originally thought this fiancée of mine would be a boring, noble lady, but I never expected her to be this interesting. I froze for a moment, then took the scented sachet off me and hung it on Shi Wu's waist. Li Qiang watched the scene before her in disbelief. I glanced at her and said coolly, "You are lucky you didn't ruin my good time today, or you'd be dead." Ji Wu's asked me with a smile, "Miss Song is truly kind. You even let her live." "It is not that I am kind-hearted. Doing it myself. How could that be as interesting as watching her and Princess Yonging have a dog-eat-dog fight?" That day, Li Qiang was badly frightened and kept leaning toward Shen Rongjing's side. The minister's daughter, who had just gotten engaged to the Shen family, was angered to tears. After the banquet, Lord Shangshu had a servant boy pass a message to Shen Rongjing. If he insisted on taking Li Qiang in, the marriage agreement would be cancelled. Hearing this, Shen Rongjing was a bit absent-minded, just staring at the scented pouch on Shi Wu's waist. I didn't expect that in the small alley on the way back to my residence, Shen Rongjing would actually block my path. He couldn't even be bothered to act friendly with me. The sarcasm in his tone was hard to hide. "You actually chose Shi Wu's in this life. What kind of taste do you even have? Your taste, on the other hand, hasn't changed. You are still deeply in love with Li Chuqing. Shen Rongjing didn't get angry, just smiled. I heard your days at the Song Manor aren't going too well. How about I help you out and propose to marry you? For a moment there, I thought I had misheard. Just like in my past life, after I died, my soul was floating in midair, and I saw Shen Rongjing leaning on my coffin. I thought he'd be so happy he couldn't sleep, but he sat red-eyed before my coffin all night, constantly muttering, "In your next life, be a good person, don't be so vicious." He never believed in ghosts and gods, yet he hired a Taoist priest to perform rites for my soul for 3 days and 3 nights. The people who came to offer condolences actually thought we were a loving couple for our entire lives. I asked him with a cold smile, "I am much more vicious in this life than my last. You still want to marry me. Aren't you afraid your little darling will be played to death by me?" The light in Shen Rongjing's eyes dimmed, and he said nothing. It must be that the wine at the minister's mansion was too strong, making you this drunk. I curled my lips into a smile. You still love to act so much, but I am already engaged. I am in no mood to play along with you. Shen Rongjing looked at me in silence and asked in a hoarse voice, "Jin Yu, is it impossible for you and me now?" Not exactly. You know, I just want to be a widow. I watched the light in his eyes get extinguished bit by bit. If you were to go and die, I might actually consider marrying you. The moment I turned to leave, I heard him say with a self-deprecating cold laugh, "So in this life, you still wish I were dead." Well, what else? In front of the Song Mansion, Xiao Hong stood by the carriage, constantly trying to signal me with her eyes. I really couldn't understand, and said to her with a frown, "Can't you just say whatever you want to say?" Xiao Hong pointed behind me and said with pursed lips, "His Highness, the Third Prince." I turned around and saw Shi Wu's face standing behind me, looking at me with his gaze lowered. "I heard from my men that the one surnamed Shen was following your carriage, so I came over to take a look." I looked at him, stunned. "Did you hear anything?" Just as I was about to breathe a sigh of relief, I heard him say with a cold laugh, "I only heard you say something about wanting to be a widow, wanting to marry someone who'd die early. I fight on the battlefield all year round. Life and death are uncertain, so this is how you took a fancy to me, Miss Song." My heart was like dead ashes. I was a bit unsteady on my feet, returning to the manor, leaning on Xiao Hong's shoulder and sobbing in a low voice. "Xiao Hong, I think I'll just find a nunnery to stay in for 2 years and then come back." Xiao Hong patted my head and coaxed in a soft voice. My dad was sick, but when he heard I had pissed off Shi Wu's Fei, he could even drink a few mouthfuls of soup. But on the second day, when the betrothal gifts were carried in, he was frighteningly gloomy. Even I didn't expect that Shi Wu's Fei would still be willing to marry me. The day after our wedding, he was to set out on an expedition to the frontier. He didn't wake me when he left, and I didn't wake up until the sun was high in the sky. I looked at the empty side of the bed, remembering how last night I grabbed his arm, panting, wanting to say something to him, but found that I couldn't say it. Sending him to the frontier was His Majesty's decree. He was already a prince detested by His Majesty, and if he defied the decree, His Majesty would definitely seize the opportunity to kill him. Even if I told him the outcome, I couldn't change anything. In the end, I only said to him, "Don't die. I am not that eager to become a widow so soon." Before Shi Wu's left, he put the key to the storeroom on my dressing table. All the reward money he earned over the years was kept in the storeroom. My heart, frozen for so long, couldn't help but soften a little. However, just as I stood up, my weak legs almost made me fall to the ground. In my heart, I secretly cursed that brute. Shi Wu's. It would be great to be a widow soon. After staying quiet for 2 months, Li Chuing finally went out, but she was stopped in the middle of a bustling street by a fierce woman. That fierce woman cursed her loudly for having an affair with her husband, pinned her down in the street, and viciously slapped her a few times. Before being pulled away by people, she took the copper hairpin from her head and slashed it across her face. The hairpin was poisoned, and the long scar on her face couldn't be healed by any amount of medicine. Even so, Shen Rongjing still wanted to take her as a concubine, and Princess Yongning was so angry she fell ill. Maybe it was because her face was ruined, or maybe she was unwilling to be a concubine. She jumped into the lake again. This time, however, Shen Rongjing didn't lose his head like in his past life and jump into the lake to save her, but instead had the servant boy beside him fish her out. She was completely soaked, trembling all over as she looked at Shen Rongjing. "If you don't want me anymore, I won't be able to live on." Her pitiful appearance moved the onlookers, but they didn't notice that Shen Rongjing's gaze on her was completely cold, without a hint of pity. The Shen Rongjing of this moment was no longer that naive youth ignorant of the world. In his past life, he had reached the pinnacle of power for a subject, second only to one and above tens of thousands. Along this journey, he had witnessed countless schemes. This time, he saw that Li Qiuying was using a self-harm ploy to win his sympathy. Li Qiuying only jumped into the lake the moment she saw him. Such a crude tactic had actually deceived him for his entire life in the past life. The obsession from my youth with a love I couldn't have was suddenly let go. That night, Princess Yongning suddenly fell ill, but Li Qiuying held on to Shen Rongjing, crying her heart out. The princess was perfectly fine. How could she get sick? She is deliberately trying to force you to go back. If you leave, what if those people who want to harm me come again? Shen Rongjing had heard these words before, in my past life, after I drank the pregnancy, stabilizing medicine, and felt unwell. When the servants asked him to return to the manor, Li Qiuying had said the same thing. At that time, Shen Rongjing also thought I was tricking him into returning to the manor. After all, they found nothing wrong with that bowl of pregnancy. Stabilizing medicine I drank. Even if there was a problem, it could only have been my own doing. I told Shen Rongjing countless times that I wouldn't use my own child as a gamble. He never believed me, but when everything played out before his eyes again, he finally believed what I said back then. He didn't stay in Li Qiuying's courtyard, but rushed back to the Shen residence instead. Everyone in the residence was gathered in the county mistress's courtyard, so no one noticed a suspicious-looking fire. Shen Rongjing had his men catch the maidservant who was about to sneak away through the doggy door in the kitchen. The interrogation revealed that she was a former servant of the Lai family. She put poison in the county mistress's calming soup, and before returning to the kitchen, she switched the poisoned soup bowl with another one. So, the doctor checked everything the county mistress ate today, but still couldn't figure out what poison she had actually taken. 2 months later, Li Qiuying died in a small courtyard in the west of the city. When she died, her entire face was horribly rotten. When I heard about this, I was somewhat shocked. The poison Li Qiuying took should be Huanyan San. Although Huanyan San is a potent poison, one's life can be saved by using medicine to suppress its effects. It is just that the medicine required is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. However, a month ago, Li Qiuying's courtyard was hit by bandits, and all her valuables were plundered. After Shen Rongjing left that day, he never went back again. I heard that Li Qiuying made a scene about committing suicide, sending people to the Shen manor to invite him several times, but Shen Rongjing was nowhere to be seen. When the eldest princess heard the news, she couldn't help but feel alarmed. I originally thought this man from the Shen family was a devoted lover. How did he change so suddenly? The woman beside her chimed in. Men, you know, they're just fickle. But with Miss Li dead, this young master of the Shen family is considered to have pulled back from the brink. He has now been recommended by the Shen family for an official position. Right now, many people are going to the Shen family to propose marriage. I heard even the minister regrets breaking off the engagement. The eldest princess sneered. This world is truly ridiculous. If a woman had encountered this, her reputation would have been ruined long ago, but a man can just be reformed. Once these words were out, all the surrounding clamor stopped. The eldest princess rubbed her temples, and those few women all withdrew from the pavilion. I tossed the feed into the pond, watching the lively koi that filled it, and turned back to smile at the princess. Your Highness is right. I also often wonder, if a chastity archway is so good, why don't men want one? The eldest princess looked at me and smiled too. Shan Rongjing, after all, has also been reborn, and his official career is going very smoothly. He sided with Prince Heng, was continuously promoted and ennobled, and entered the central pavilion. In his previous life, Prince Heng supported noble consort Xiao's son, the sixth prince, to become the crown prince. After His Majesty passed away, Prince Heng was promoted to Prince Regent, his power overshadowing the entire court. He made a move he absolutely couldn't lose. Soon, an informant's letter about him colluding with foreign enemies made His Majesty suspicious of the Prime Minister, and he was confined to the inner dungeons. His Majesty forbade the eldest princess from entering the palace to plead for him. The eldest princess could only entrust me with delivering the Prime Minister's clothes into the palace. In the palace, I saw Shen Rongjing. I looked at him coldly. The Prime Minister has been upright and incorruptible his entire life. I never thought he would be framed like this. Anyway, he'll die from His Majesty's suspicion in the end, so I might as well put him to use. He gave me a deep look. As long as I have power, I'll have everything I want. You've had immense power for 2 lifetimes. What is there that you haven't had? He stared at me fixedly. Jin Yu, in this lifetime, I still want to marry you. I reminded him with a cold expression. Shen Rongjing, I am already married. We all know he won't be coming back from the battlefield. He pulled his lips into a smile. After the Prime Minister's downfall, the eldest princess will also lose her power, who will still be there to protect you then. From Shen Rongjing's eyes, I saw his determination to win. But he should also know that even at the moment of my death, I will not give in. I never thought, after fighting with him for 20 years in my past life, I would have to continue fighting him in this life. After I left the palace, Shen Rongjing followed me the whole time. I know too much. He can't let me ruin his plans. The eldest princess was waiting at the palace gate, and when she saw me come out, she came up to me, held my hand, and asked worriedly, "Is he okay? Was he subjected to any torture?" I squeezed her hand and shook my head, saying, "The Prime Minister is fine. Your Highness, you must take care of yourself. Right now, the Prime Minister is relying completely on you to hold on." The eldest princess looked at Shen Rongjing standing behind me and sneered coldly. I didn't expect him to actually help Prince Heng. Now that the Grand Chancellor has lost power and Prince Heng and noble consort Xiao have formed an alliance, I am already powerless to resist. I raised my hand and used a silk handkerchief to wipe the tears from the side of the eldest princess's face, saying in a voice only the 2 of us could hear, "Your Highness." What I didn't expect was that Prince Heng would support the 6th prince to take the position of crown prince. It reminds me of my dad. The eldest princess looked at me, stunned. Soon, the guards at the palace gate separated us. Shen Rongjing's men guarded outside my residence, placing me under house arrest. 7 days later, at the royal hunting grounds, the crown prince's horse was startled. With bloodshot eyes and foaming at the mouth, it trampled the young eunuch, leading it to death. Prince Heng risked his life to protect and saved the crown prince. This scene was witnessed by the emperor. After that day, consort Xiao lost favor, and the crown prince was confined to the eastern palace. The emperor's health deteriorated day by day, and the eldest princess often went to keep him company. That night, the emperor's medicine was poisoned. Prince Heng, leading the rebel army, fought his way all the way to the Grand Hall. The palace was engulfed in raging flames, dyeing the night sky red. Shen Rongjing barged into my residence with his guards, his affectionate eyes fixed on me. "Jin Yu, after tonight, Prince Heng will purge all his political enemies. Your only way to survive is to come with me." My expression was indifferent. Prince Heng is really willing to go all out for his only son, to even do something like staging a coup. Shen Rongjing froze. "You, how did you know? Just a guess." I curved my lips. I didn't expect my guess would actually help the eldest princess bring down Prince Heng and consort Xiao. Prince Heng has already stormed the Grand Hall with his troops. The eldest princess can't win. I touched the dagger in my sleeve and asked softly, "Do you think I can start over again after I die this time?" He said to me in a trembling voice, "Don't do anything stupid. I don't want to lose you again." Do anything stupid. The dagger in my sleeve was to take his life. The moment I drew the dagger, preparing to stab him, an arrow suddenly pierced his chest. Shen Rongjing collapsed to his knees in front of me, blood continuously gushing from his mouth and nose. He looked at the dagger in my hand, his gaze trembling. I smiled and looked at him. "What, you seem very shocked that I would kill you." Not far away stood a soldier wearing armor and holding a bow and arrow. It was one of Shi Wu's Fei's men. I was taken into the palace. The palace coup had already been suppressed. Prince Heng was beheaded in front of the main hall. I ran before Shi Wu's Fei with reddened eyes, trembling all over as I said, "Thank goodness my husband sent people. Otherwise this humble one would have lost my life." He put his arm around my shoulder and said coldly in my ear, "How come I heard from Chen Ying that if he had come a moment later, Shen Rongjing would have died at your hands?" Zi Wu's saw through my act at a glance. I couldn't be bothered to act anymore, so I looked up and asked him, "How come you are back?" Imperial Sister had already anticipated they would rebel and notified me to return to the capital to provide support. I didn't bet wrong in the end. It was the eldest princess who won. In this life, I still won against Shen Rongjing. Before the emperor died, he handed power into the hands of the eldest princess. The eldest princess ascended the throne, becoming the first female emperor of this dynasty. Zi Wu's was once again given great responsibilities and promoted to Prince Regent. In this capital, everyone wants to cozy up to the rich and powerful, but no one is better at it than me. The remnants of Prince Heng's faction were quickly purged. Before Shen Rongjing was executed, I went to see him. His eyes red, his voice hoarse. He asked me, "Jinyu," I suddenly remembered, after I died, my soul was drifting in mid-air. He sat in front of my coffin for a whole night. At that time, his eyes were also this red, this bloodshot. Back then, he was constantly muttering, "Be a good person in your next life. Don't be so vicious." I looked at Shen Rongjing before me, now reduced to a prisoner, and said with a cold curl of my lips, "You see, I wasn't a good person in this life either. I'll only be worse. I see now. When it comes to playing power politics and manipulating people's hearts, I really am no match for you." He chuckled and asked me, "Are you here today to see me off on my final journey?" I shook my head. "The few letters of denunciation that brought you down in our past life weren't from your trusted aides. I only exposed you a year after I died because I didn't want to implicate the people around me, and I also didn't want to meet you on the road to the underworld. I came just to tell you that in our past life, I was the one who won too." The color instantly drained from Shen Rongjing's face. He thought I still had some faint affection for him. But the affection between him and me had already vanished without a trace in my past life. The palace attendant who passed on his message said that before he died, he wanted to see me to apologize to me in person. But now that I've come, he can no longer get his apology out. Before leaving, I said to him, "I never intended to forgive you, and I've already taken my revenge in full, so I don't need your apology." My dad was imprisoned next to him, Shen Rongjing. When King Heng rebelled, he also played a part. The moment he saw me, he said in a hoarse voice, "Save Dad. As long as you are willing to plead with the Grand Princess and the Regent King, they'll definitely spare Dad's life." I stopped in my tracks, stared at his cloudy eyes, and chuckled. "They were originally planning to spare your life." A light appeared in his eyes. "Then," I said slowly, "so executing you was my idea. His Majesty governs the realm with the help of the Prime Minister. They, the husband and wife, are both talents in governance, and the realm is stable and prosperous. However, just as in my past life, they never had an heir. So they brought my son into the palace to raise him. His and the Prime Minister's moral character is much better than mine. They will surely be able to raise my son very well. The days are leisurely without a child to look after, so I spend all day taking Xiao Hong out to eat, drink, and have fun. Once, while playing mahjong, Princess Chi made some passive, aggressive comments about me, saying I was so scheming that I'd even send my own son into the palace to please His Majesty. I put down the mahjong tiles in my hand, lowered my eyes, and said, I haven't needed to play any schemes for a long time now. Xiao Hong sighed softly. Miss, you truly carry the air of a regent's princess consort now. Who would have thought that in the next moment I would lunge forward and get into a brawl with princess consort? Chi Evrion at the scene was dumbfounded. A few days later, Xiaowen's returned from the battlefield. It is not like I became a widow. His armor was covered in dust as he bathed in the room. Prince Chi stood outside the room, tattling. Third brother, that woman you married is a complete shrew. In the fight the other day, she scratched Princess Consort Chi's face to shreds. Sitting in the bathtub, Xi Wen's called out towards the door. Don't worry, second brother. I will be sure to teach her a lesson. Then he looked at me standing by the tub and asked softly, You got into a fight. I nodded. Who won? I said in a low voice. I won. Admiration showed in his eyes. Not bad. Princess Consort Chi comes from a family of military generals. Prince Chi continued to ask from outside the door. So how are you going to deal with her? You have to give me an explanation today. Naturally, with the family rules, Xie Wen's applied the court, gifted wound ointment to the shallow scratch under my eye, and said in a low voice, Tomorrow I'll teach you a few moves. So if you want to fight again in the future, no one will be able to hurt you in the slightest. His indulgence was so much that even I couldn't stand it anymore. You should know that I am full of calculations towards everyone. Why are you still so good to me? Is being calculating not good? How could being calculating be good? In my past life, I fought with my mother-in-law, fought with Shen Rongjing, and ended up with the reputation of a venomous woman in the capital city. Xi Wu's eyes darkened a bit. Everyone who had seen my birth mother said she was simple and kind, but she died a tragic death due to the schemes of the closest mammy by her side. So I killed that mammy to avenge her. I like that you know how to scheme to protect yourself and can also plan for me along the way. What is not to like? If I hadn't met you, I would probably still be an unfavored prince. Many soldiers wouldn't listen to my command. I am afraid I would have died on the battlefield long ago. In my past life, Shen Rongjing put on a lofty air and hated my scheming nature to the core. I've lived 2 lifetimes, and this is the first time I've ever heard a man say he likes a scheming woman. Shi Wuja truly liked me, and for the next 20 years we got along harmoniously. I had thought that after living 2 lifetimes, I only wanted to live comfortably for myself, and would never fall for anyone again. Yet, on the day he was actually killed in battle, I cried my heart out. This was the first time I had wept so bitterly since losing my child in my past life. For 20 years of companionship, he always treated me extremely well. Now I am the only one left, and I am in a complete panic. Before Shi Wu's passed away, he left me a squad of secret guards he had personally trained. He stroked my hair and said gently, I must protect you well so that you can live to spend all that silver. Later, His Majesty became gravely ill, and those vying for power were itching to make a move. His Majesty's doting on my son brought about a fatal disaster. It was the hidden guards left by Shi Wuzhe who protected the lives of me and my son. Those who harmed me, I didn't spare a single one. His Majesty, before he died, summoned me. Several old ministers knelt all over the floor in the great hall. This old subject has never seen such a vicious woman. Your Majesty must absolutely not trust her lightly. His Majesty just held my hand and said, if she didn't have the slightest bit of a scheme, she would have died before she was even married. The old official continued, if she becomes the Empress Dowager in the future, the new emperor's reputation won't be able to convince the public either. I looked at the kneeling old official and said with a low laugh, "Why don't you bear this burden for me? It is the perfect opportunity for you to retire to your hometown, and you'll even gain the virtuous name of a loyal subject who protected his master." Her Majesty laughed. Before she died, she passed the throne to my son, and I became the Empress Dowager. I lived to be 75. My children were filial, and I was blessed with a house full of children and grandchildren. I sat in a high position, spending all day listening to music and painting, with no mind to get involved in the scheming and infighting of the harem concubines. Everyone said I was detached from worldly strife. I never thought that in my old age I would end up with a reputation for being gentle and virtuous.